Good morning and welcome to Just Parlays with Chris King. I, of course, am Chris King, your host and the only person on the show. Happy Christmas Eve or Merry Christmas Eve, however you want to put it. Happy holidays to everybody. Hopefully, you're all doing well and you have your Christmas shopping done by now. If not, well, you could be in some trouble. I'm sure the temperatures are balmy where everybody is today. It's this morning here, it's a balmy 10, and it's 5 below with the wind chill, which is a weird concept because it doesn't normally get that cold here. But I know back home where my parents live, this morning it was 3 and it's 20 below zero. A lot of cold temperatures around the country, I'm sure it's cold up in Canada as well. No, it's not. The weather's not bad here, unknown. It's just cold. No snow or anything like that. Just a lot of chilly weather. I missed the daily show too, John. We're hoping that if we can get enough traction with people watching, we'll be able to go back to a daily format. It'll be a lot easier for everybody. It's a matter of having the right amount of engagement. So, like I say every week, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your friends' neighbors, tell your neighbors' friends. The more people that watch, the easier it is to justify being on more often, because obviously it takes work to put these things together with all the research and everything else. Hopefully, if you weren't here last week and you missed out, hopefully we'll put together another profitable weekend. Just like last week, we've got a special thing just for the viewers where you can get a 4-team parlay there's a link to it in the show box below where you can get it for $12. Let me dig up a promo code where I can make it even cheaper for you. Just give me 1 second. We change the promo codes every week, so I have to go back and figure out what it is. But expect a lot of cold temperatures in the NFL today, so that ought to be very, very, very interesting. Okay, promo code is KJ4YCKP50. I'm going to type that in and put it on the bottom of the screen because that is a pain. Let me see. There we go. Let's see. Let me just type it in here. I have to go back and look at it because these randomly generated ones can be a pain, to say the least. Let's see here. And while I'm doing this, just bear with me because my computer likes to be temperamental first thing in the morning. It's got a mind of its own. I blame it on because it's a Saturday and it's a holiday weekend, but whatever works. But hopefully, like I said, you guys are ready for the holidays. You're ready for Saturday football because we got a lot of it. Bunch of games today, only 3 tomorrow. There's 1 college bowl game today, and that's it. We don't see hockey again until Tuesday. We don't see college basketball. There's, I think, a couple games maybe Monday, but not many. You'll get more of a regular schedule over on Tuesday, and the NBA has a few games tomorrow, and that's it. So a lot of action today, not as much tomorrow, which is kind of disappointing. Okay, let's see if I can get this to cooperate now. Yeah, there we go. There's the promo code. So that's in there now. Like I said, you can save 50%. So you can get that promo or that parlay that I was talking about for $6. We had it last week. Not a ton of people took advantage of it, and it was too bad because it panned out and paid better than 11-1. We had Fresno State in the bowl game over Washington State. We had the Sabres over the Coyotes on the road. We had Kansas State over Nebraska in college basketball. And I'm trying to remember what the fourth one was. It might have been the Rangers. But it paid out. So go click the link in the show box. Go ahead and get the promo. I'm calling it Merry Propsmith. I don't know what they called it up when we've set it up, but that's what I'm calling it because, there's a lot of good props out there today. Please come back. I'll bring a crowd. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I miss seeing a lot of you guys. James, I haven't seen since we moved to this time slot. IUPUI John was here last week. But yeah, a lot of you guys I haven't seen as much because of the fact that it's granted it's early in a lot of places. It's early here. But I mean, it's only 6 o'clock on the West Coast. It's 7 in Arizona, places like that. But like I said, if we can get enough people, we might be able to pull that out. Let's just take a quick overview at what's going on today. We'll talk about yesterday too. We saw Alex Ovechkin pass Gordie Howe on the goal scoring list. So congratulations to him. We saw I saw that DJ Uiagalelei is who transferred from Clemson, is now expected to go to Oregon State. It's a bit of a change going from Clemson to there. I mean, Oregon State is a team on the upswing. They played pretty good football this season, as we saw when they ran over Florida in the bowl game last week. Miles Austin, we got a ban for gambling as the Jets receiver coach. Hopefully he didn't bet on the Jets because they looked terrible on Thursday night against Jacksonville. And, give credit to the Jaguars. They've turned that team around after starting horribly. They're the Lions of the AFC. Now they're all of a sudden, they're 7-8. They're half a game behind Tennessee for the AFC South lead. They own a win over the Titans. I'm just trying to see if they played twice or they only played once. Yeah, they've only played once. They'll play in Week 18 in Jacksonville. The Jaguars get Houston next week. So a real good chance to be 8-8 going into the regular season finale. We're looking at a Tennessee team that's going the wrong direction at the wrong time. Now they won't have Ryan Tannehill. We're looking at the fact that he's not he's probably going to miss the rest of the season. I'm just looking at some of the other injuries around the league. Lamar Jackson won't be playing today for the Ravens. It'll be Tyler Huntley. Interesting stat, Huntley and Mike White are the only quarterbacks in the last 3 weeks with at least 70 pass attempts and no touchdowns. Aaron Donald, of course, not playing. He's out probably for the season. Treylon Burks dealing with a concussion. He hasn't cleared the concussion protocol yet, but Vrabel hopes he's going to play. We know it's going to be Minshew Mania for the Eagles against the Cowboys tonight. So that's going to be interesting. I'm surprised the line shifted as much as it did. Minshew has been a decent quarterback in his time in the league. and he's familiar with the system with Philadelphia. He played there last season and was 41 of 60 passing for 439 yards with 4 touchdowns and 1 interception over the span of 4 games. But, I don't think marking the Eagles as a hefty underdog just because of the fact that they don't have Jalen Hurts is necessarily a smart thing to do, because you're talking about a guy who has experience. You still have that Eagles defense that leads the league in sacks with 55. They generate turnovers, and we just watched the Cowboys blow a 17-point lead to Jacksonville, where they lost in overtime on, of all things, a pick six. Yeah, we've hit the shot in the dark. I think it's twice. We've had a few others where we've hit 8 or 9 out of 10 on there. There's a lot of moving parts with those, and that's what I always say. People are like, well, why don't you hit it all the time? Well, if we did that, it wouldn't be called gambling, would it? It'd be called winning. And unfortunately, it's not the way it works. That's what we say, take a few from column A, take a few from column B. You don't have to take them all. We just put them there so they're available to you. But, can't make everybody happy. Of course, too, let me get to what Reichel used to call the housekeeping before I forget. Make sure that if you don't get enough of my bets now I used to say every day, but now it's, on Saturdays, you can click the link in the show box below. It'll take you right to my page on the experts.winnersandliners.com. Had a decent day yesterday. How did I go? What was it? 5-3-1 or something like that? Yeah, 5-3-1, because who lost? Oh, Indiana didn't cover. That was my mistake for thinking the Hoosiers could blow out a crappy team like Kennesaw State. The Raptors beat Cleveland. Didn't see that coming. And the Blue Jackets were too injured to beat up on the Blackhawks, which was disappointing. But the push, I took Louisiana with the points against Houston in the bowl game yesterday. And they ended up pushing because they lost by 7. I took Wake Forest. They beat Missouri by 10. And Sam Hartman's final game with the Demon Deacons, whether he transfers or goes pro, remains to be seen. But nice to see he went out on a winning note. Philadelphia beat the Clippers. The Avalanche used overtime to beat Nashville. And Vegas beat St. Louis on the ice. My upset pick yesterday was I took the Pacers over the Heat. And they won outright, that's the second big outright win they've had as an underdog this week. They beat Boston earlier in the week I think it was a 9-point underdog. They were getting 6.5 yesterday, beat Miami by 3. So, good day yesterday for the week. It's like plus 526. So, can't complain about that. But, should be a good day. A lot of frigid temperatures around the world there. And like Unknown said, make sure you smash the like button. Of course, like and subscribe. Like I said, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your friends' neighbors, tell your neighbors' friends. The more people we have that watch the show, the better off it is for everybody, because it's better off for me because then people see that we're drawing it in an audience. It's better off for you guys because you get all the picks that are there, and it's better off for the higher up because they see that there's engagement and people might get involved and get premium picks and things like that. So like I said, don't sleep on the premium, especially the parlay of the day that's available only for the viewers. The link's in the show box. like I said, it's $12. You use the promo code that's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You can get it for $6. And last week's paid out better than 11-1. So can't complain about that unless you didn't get it. Then you complain that you didn't get it, but then that's your own fault. Now, with that said, we can take a look at what we've got on the slate for today. I don't want to take up everybody's time. I'm sure you guys have plenty of things to do to prepare for the holidays, whether you're going out today, whether a family's coming to your house, whatever. And besides, you want to maximize the window of opportunity for you to take advantage of these picks before game time, because, of course, the early games start at 1 p.m. Eastern. So we'll start with 3 for the money. And we'll start with the Detroit Lions. Talk about a team that's been on a roll. Jared Goff has not thrown an interception in 6 weeks. The Lions are 6-1 in their last 7 games. They are 7-7 on the year. They're in the thick of the NFC wildcard picture with pretty much seemingly everybody else. They come into today's game ranked. Let's see. They are technically 9th in the NFC. They're tied with Seattle, but Seattle won the head-to-head matchup. But they're half a game behind the Commanders, who are 7-6-1, thanks to that tie a couple weeks ago against the Giants. But this is a team that's been playing very good football. Their defense has improved. They haven't been as poor as they were early in the season when they were giving up points by the truckload. And let's face it, they're facing a Carolina team that, sure, they're in the thick of the NFC South race, but let's face it, the NFC South is terrible. The Panthers 23rd in the league in scoring at 19.7 points a game. I know they've been better under Steve Wilkes after Matt Rule got fired, but it's still a team that doesn't have a quarterback. Sam Darnold, not the answer. You have to wonder, will the Panthers look for a new quarterback in the offseason? Will they look for a quarterback in the draft? They're going to have to do something to get a better signal caller in there, because I don't think Matt Corral, the third-round pick for Ole Miss, who's missed the whole year with a foot injury, is going to be the answer there either. But this is a Detroit team. They're 5th in the league in scoring offense. The last 5 weeks, they've held 3 of their opponents to 18 points or less. And they've, like I said, they've won 6 out of 7. Their one loss in that stretch came on Thanksgiving Day to Buffalo. They lost 28-25. But this is a team that's been playing good football. They run the ball fairly well. They've gotten good quarterback play. Goff has just 7 interceptions on the year against 23 touchdown passes. So a resurgent year for him. He's only been sacked 19 times, which is saying something given what you expect from the Lions. I think they can go on the road. They'll come down this way and go to Charlotte and beat the Panthers. I just don't have faith in Carolina at this point in time. They're just not a good football team. I don't care if they're only a game out of the NFC South lead. That's just a testament to how bad that division is. The 49ers over Washington. Now, there's a lot of rumbling saying that if the Commanders go down a couple scores, you might see the return of Carson Wentz. As far as that goes, you could see the return of Joe Theismann in his prime, and it's not going to make a damn bit of difference because the Commanders have struggled offensively. They're facing a very good San Francisco defense. The 49ers have already clinched the NFC West. They're playing good football. They're at home. Just looking here, the 49ers first in the league in scoring defense, allowing 15 points a game. Of course, you won't see Deebo Samuel, but that was to be expected. I think he's hoping to be back next week or maybe in week 18. Chase Young hopes to play today make his season debut for the Commanders, but let's be honest. Washington's not a good offense. I know they got hosed last week on that penalty call on McLaurin, but we're looking at a team that has scored since week 3. They scored 28-27 in the first 2 weeks. Since then, 8, 10, 17, 12, 17, 17, and 19. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks where they've scored 20 points or less. Well, 8 weeks because, of course, they had 12 last week. And the first meeting with the Giants, they scored 20 exactly. So they're not an offensive powerhouse. It's going to be a challenge for them to stop the 49ers with the way that McCaffrey has rejuvenated the run game. I feel like San Francisco has run for at least 150 yards in 4 of their last 6 games. Now, Washington's good defensively. I'm not going to take anything away from them on that front. But their offense is terrible. And if you can't move the ball, and I don't see them moving it against San Francisco, you're going to have a tough time scoring. And I think that we're going to see you're going to see San Francisco roll to a double-digit win here. Brock Purdy, he's done a good job for being Mr. Irrelevant that everybody wants to talk about. He may be Mr. Irrelevant, but he's Mr. Relevant right now because without Jimmy G and Trey Lance, you got to have somebody moving the ball. And he's done a decent job. Give him credit. The kid's stepped up. He's made plays. 62 of 93 passing. 678 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He showed good situational awareness in the game against Seattle where they had that 3rd and 1 late in the game, and he scrambled for the first down, and he went down inbounds before the 2-minute warning. Seattle challenged the ruling. It was confirmed that he got the first down. That took Seattle's last timeout, and the 49ers managed to run out the clock to get the win. That's something you can't teach. You can't teach situational awareness. And that's something that he has. And Heineke, for all the great plays he makes on broken plays and stuff, he's still not really a quarterback you can rely on when it matters. Then we're going to go with Justin Jefferson, over 90.5 receiving yards. It may be cold, but Minnesota's plays in a dome. We saw last week where they came back from 33-0 to beat the Colts in what had to be the gut punch of the century for Indianapolis. It was also a gut punch for Minnesota bettors because even with kicking the field goal, they didn't cover the line because the line was 3.5 or 4. So there was that. The Giants have no corners. Adoree Jackson is hurt. And if you think Fabian Moreau is going to cover Justin Jefferson, you're sadly mistaken. Jefferson has put up some huge numbers this season. He had over 200 yards a couple weeks ago. I don't know if he'll get to 200 yards. But I think you're going to see him hit the century mark. He's sitting at 1,623 yards on the season. He's got 26 receptions up that go for at least 20 yards. He leads the league in catches. He leads the league in yards. He caught 12 for 123 last week against the Lions. He caught 11 for 223 against New England on Thanksgiving. He caught 9 for 139. The Giants don't have corners that can shut him down. I think that he's going to have a big game and hit the century mark there. Now, Unknown, I saw you were talking about you took the under for passing yards for Justin Fields and Deshaun Watson. Yeah. I like those. I don't think you're going to see a ton of points for Cleveland. The last time they played weather like this, they lost 14-0 to the Bengals. And the Saints aren't good. Yeah, also for Travis Kelce and J.K. Dobbins, yeah, I've got those further down here. So those are safe bets, I think. So we will move on to the 4 for the show. This is one of my premiums that I would have sent out. And look, there's J.K. Dobbins, so we don't have to talk about him. He's obviously going to be the feature back for Baltimore. You're facing the Falcons. These are two teams that love to run the ball. They're top 4 in the league in rushing offense. I don't think you're going to see a ton of passes. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of offensive production necessarily. But I think that Dobbins, he had a big game last week, ran for, 123 or 130, something like that. He's clearly now the go-to back with Gus Edwards, filling in as the second back. Kenyon Drake is basically useless at this point. Justice Hill's gotten some run, but Dobbins, last week, 13 carries, 125 yards against the Steelers. The week before, 15 for 120. So he's putting up yard per carry averages kind of like what we saw when he was at Ohio State. 8 yards per carry against the Steelers, 9.6 yards last week. All he needs really is one big run, and you're in good shape. And Atlanta's not necessarily a great defense. I think he should have no problem going over that number. We've got the one bowl game there. It's the Hawaii Bowl. San Diego State, Middle Tennessee. San Diego State, they started the year slow. I remember we thought they were going to roll over Arizona in the opener. Talked about it on the show way back in September. They got trucked by the Wildcats. They started the year 2-3, but they got better as the season wore on. Middle Tennessee, not necessarily that great. I know they finished the year, I think, 7-5. But Middle Tennessee, they haven't played a defense like San Diego State. They like to throw the ball a lot. They struggle to beat Florida International in their regular season finale. And I just think that, dealing with a San Diego State team that can defend the pass, and it's pretty good. They've played better offensively since moving to Maiden at quarterback, a guy who was playing safety earlier in the year. I mean, they finally figured out, hey, you know what? Braxton Burmeister is not going to get it done, and Kyle Crum was terrible. I mean, that guy was 17 of 53 passing. 5 of 17 passing for 53 yards. That wasn't going to get it done either. Maiden, he hasn't been necessarily terrific, but 122 of 194, 1,721 yards, 10 touchdowns, 7 picks. He's added a couple 100 yards and 3 scores on the ground. But you're banking on San Diego State's defense here. Middle Tennessee, like I said, they won 3 straight to close the year, but they beat Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, and Florida International, and nobody's impressed by those teams. They were beaten by UTSA. They were blown out by UAB. They peaked early in the year with that win over Miami down in South Beach back at the end of September. And then they probably turned around and lost their next 3 games in 4 out of 5. I don't trust him in a bowl game. I don't trust Rick Stockstill. Like I said, when you have to beat Florida International on a pick 6 with under 3 minutes to go, good luck with that. I'm going to go with the Eagles over the Cowboys. 2 things. I can't trust the Cowboys after they just blew a 17-point lead and lost to Jacksonville. I also don't think that the drop from Hurts to Minshew is that big. Sure, you're not going to have Minshew run for 100 and some yards like you would get out of Hurts, but that play calling is what got Hurts injured in the first place. You don't need to sneak the ball that many times. You've got a running back. You've got multiple running backs. You've got Sanders. You've got Gainwell. You got Boston Scott. You have other options. You don't have to just plow forward with Hurts. And May Sirianni and company will be a little more careful going forward in that case. But in this situation, Dallas is reeling a bit. I mean, let's face it. You lose to Jacksonville. You struggled to beat Houston the week before. And we're talking about a team that's 1-12-1. You were sputtering along with the Colts before you had that 33-point outburst in the fourth quarter, because you look at that game against Indianapolis, it was 21-19 after 3. And then they scored, they scored on a fumble return, and then they got, 18 seconds after they had scored a touchdown, then they scored 3 more touchdowns down the stretch. But that was a 2-point game going to the fourth quarter. So you're looking at 3 straight games where they've had issues against subpar teams. And, if you want to go back even further, they beat the Giants on Thanksgiving by a touchdown. I know the Giants scored in the final seconds to cover the line in that game. But still, those aren't the kind of numbers you want to have late in the season. The best performance that we've seen from the Cowboys came back in before Thanksgiving when they blew out Minnesota on the road 40-3. So I don't see, just because you switch the quarterback, why the line has moved that much. I mean, we're talking about a Philadelphia team that's 13-1. I know they had their issues putting away the Bears last week, but we're talking about a team that can get after Prescott. Dallas has a banged-up offensive line. And, if the run game doesn't go anywhere, we've seen Zeke Elliott struggle at times. We've seen Pollard get bottled up as well. What do you do if you're the Cowboys? And the answer is disappoint your fans, because they're good at that. I'll take the Eagles with the points, but I wouldn't be surprised if they beat Dallas straight out, because of the fact that Dallas is not as great as their record indicates. Sure, they're 10-4, and give them credit for winning 10 games. But we talked about last week Minnesota being a 10-win team that had a point differential of -1. Now Dallas isn't at that point because they've blown out a few teams, but they've got to play better football than we've seen lately. Prescott has already thrown 11 interceptions in 9 games. He's got more losses than Cooper Rush. Everybody said, well, when Prescott comes back, they'll be great. Well, they're scoring a ton of points. I'll give them credit. They've averaged, I think, 35.5 points since Prescott came back. But the problem is they're still not necessarily beating teams that they should beat. I mean, or they're not beating them convincingly. Come on, you needed a touchdown in the last minute to beat a Houston team that has 1 win in a game where you were favored by, what was it, 17 or 18 points? I mean, that's not going to impress anybody. I mean, you were down 6 going into the fourth quarter in that game. They struggled last week as well. Like I said, they were up 27-10, lost 40-34. They couldn't get stops. You look at Jacksonville in the second half of that game. Let me take a look at their drives here. Okay, Jacksonville's drives in the second half are, let's see, where'd they go? There we go. Jaguars drives in the second half. Field goal, they threw an interception. Touchdown. They fumbled with over a minute 28 to go. They got the ball back with 1:01 left because Dallas went no yards in 3 plays to kick a game tying field goal. Then they punted on their drive in overtime, but it didn't matter because they got the pick 6 on Dallas's possession to win the game. So the only in 7 drives, you stopped them twice on turnovers and a punt in overtime. That's it. You can't bank on turnovers necessarily with Philadelphia. And if you can't stop Jacksonville, I have to worry about whether you can stop Philadelphia, because Philadelphia is a very good offensive team. Hey, Jeffrey, hope you have happy holidays as well. Glad glad you stopped by. Enjoy the holidays with friends, family, and all that good stuff. Make sure you eat everything in sight and just enjoy it. That's what it's all about. We talked about Dobbins, and now we'll talk about Josh Jacobs. First, of course, our condolences go out to the Steelers family, our Steelers nation, I should say, after the untimely passing of Franco Harris. Of course, yesterday was the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. I'm sure you've all seen it hundreds of times. If you haven't, watch it. The best thing that I can say about the Immaculate Reception was when I remember they talked about Fred Swearingen was a referee, and he got on the phone and called Art McNally, who was the league director of officials at the time, and they said, "What do we do? Do we rule it a touchdown?" And Swearingen said to McNally, "If we don't call this a touchdown, we're never going to get out of this stadium alive." And it stood, because at that point, of course, if the ball was touched by an offensive player, it couldn't be caught by another offensive player unless a defender touched it. And, of course, there's still the question, did the ball ricochet off Frenchie Fuqua? Did it ricochet off Jack Tatum? I know the late John Madden, was the coach of the Raiders in that game. And, of course, tomorrow will mark the 1 year passing, or I'm sorry, not tomorrow, Monday will mark the 1 year passing of John Madden. So, of course, our thoughts go to his wife, Virginia, and his kids as well. But I think, Jacobs leads the league in rushing. Pittsburgh, let's face it, they're going through the motions at this point. They have nothing to play for. They pretty much have to win out and get about 37 different things to go their way in order to come up with to even have a shot at a playoff berth. They're decent against the run, but it's not going to matter with Jacobs. Jacobs has run the ball against pretty much everybody. He's, making himself a bunch of money this season. He leads the league. Let's see. He's got 1,495 rushing yards and 11 scores. He's caught 46 passes for 363 yards, so he's closing in on the 2,000-yard mark for total offense. Only one Raider to ever pull that off. That was Marcus Allen in his MVP season in 85. Now, Jacobs will not be MVP, let's be honest. But, he's put together a good season. And he's been a bright spot for a Raiders team that's, had some issues. Adams has put up some big numbers, but they've had a lot of injuries with Waller and Renfro and guys like that. But I think that, he'll go over he'll probably get close to the century mark if he doesn't go over it. So look for a big day from him in the cold weather. Let's see what they're saying the weather's going to be in Pittsburgh tonight. I know, like I said, up where my parents live near Buffalo, it's 3 right now. Currently in Pittsburgh, it's 4. But, it's supposed to warm up. It's supposed to get all the way up to 13. But by game time in Pittsburgh, well, see, it'll be warm. It's 4 now, but at 8 o'clock when the game starts, it's supposed to be 14 degrees and only feel like -2. So, something to look forward to if you're in the Steel City. Some exciting games to come today. Currently in Chicago, the temperature is 3. It's supposed to be about 12 with winds north of 20 miles an hour. We'll see if that hampers the Buffalo passing game at all. A lot of cold weather, like I said, Cleveland with the lake effect snow. Cincinnati is going to New England. So a lot of fun weather to be had for sure. Now you see there, if you bet the money lines, it's a little better than 13-1 because of the number for the Eagles being a plus money. If you take the point spreads, it goes down to 12-1 because of the fact you're not getting that bigger chunk of plus money on there. But still, a nice return for the holiday season. Should things pan out as we expect. And that takes us to everybody's favorite part of the show, the shot in the dark. As Jim Williams used to say, we call it the Chinese menu. You take some from column A, you take some from column B, you make your own. Whatever works for you. I'm going to start with Justin Fields. I know that everybody's like, well, he can't pass. Well, he hasn't had to. He runs the ball very well. Buffalo's banged up in the defensive line. Jordan Phillips questionable. Ed Oliver is questionable today. Boogie Basham is out. The Bears are going to run the ball. It's all they know how to do. They don't have any receivers. I think Chase Claypool is out again. Just going to take a look at their injury report here. Okay, the Bears injury report says, Claypool is doubtful. Equanimous St. Brown is out. Tight end Trevin Wesco is out. There are two offensive linemen that are doubtful, and Cody Whitehair and Tevin Jenkins. So they're not gonna throw the ball, or if they do, they're gonna throw to Cole Kmet. But expect a lot of the run game. I expect to see him. I expect to see Fields run the ball early and often to try and keep the Bears out of tough passing situations where they'd be forced to throw. And he's gone over the numbers quite regularly of late. When you look at his recent rushing totals, let me just take a quick look here. Of course, we know the Bears eliminated from playoff contention, but hey, they're still in line for a high draft pick, and that's something. Now that Fields has started to develop, if they can get some playmakers for him, it might be better. But you're looking at Fields' rushing totals of late. Last 5 games, 178 against the Dolphins, 147 against the Lions, 85 against the Falcons, 71 against the Packers, and 95 last week against the Eagles. So in the month of December, he's run the ball 21 times. He's only thrown 46 passes in the 2 games since the Bears had their bye week in mid-December, because, of course, that makes perfect sense in the National Football League. But look for him to run a fair amount and get over that total, unless Buffalo finds a way. If they spy him with Milano or Edmonds, that might be able to hold him in check, but I still expect him to have a good day on the ground. Brandon Ayuk, over 4.5 receptions. Without Samuel, Ayuk is basically the number 1 target for the 49ers. I know everybody's like, well, what about George Kittle? Well, Kittle hasn't caught more than 4 passes since October. And that's weird because, he's a very good tight end, but, they're not targeting for some reason. Ayuk leads the team with 60 catches. He's got 774 yards. He's got 7 touchdowns. He only caught 2 passes each of the last 2 weeks. But before that, he caught 5 balls in back-to-back games. I think they can take advantage of Washington's secondary to build up a lead. And, he's without Samuel, he's the number 1 target by default. And I like the fact that it's plus money on that. I'm going to take the Raiders over the Steelers. The Raiders, I get both teams kind of have something to play for. But, the Steelers, I don't trust their quarterback play. I guess Pickett is supposed to play this week. Do I want to see Pickett back there in the second or against the Raiders with Max Crosby and Chandler Jones? No. the Raiders have to be mad. They still let that one slip away against the Rams a couple weeks ago. They got the fortuitous win last week where whether you think Keelan Cole was out of bounds or not, it's fun watching Mac Jones get stiff-armed by Jones after he picked off that lateral on the way to the end zone at the end of the game, and you have to wonder, what the hell were you thinking if you're New England? The Falcons over the Ravens, I'm taking the points. We saw Baltimore do nothing against Cleveland last week. They scored 3 points. That was a kick in the nuts because I took Baltimore to with the points against Cleveland, and they did nothing. I just don't know what Baltimore is going to do here. I mean, both teams are going to run, going to bleed a lot of clock. I think it's going to lead to a close game because nobody's going to want to throw. Desmond Ridder showed he's not great throwing the ball last week. He was 13 of 26 for under 100 yards against New Orleans. And the question is, will they let him throw the ball anymore in cold weather? Probably not. Temperatures in Baltimore, let's see, I'm going to guess cold. In Charm City, it's currently a balmy, as Marv Albert would say, the temperature a balmy 9 degrees. By game time, it's supposed to be all the way up to 19. Winds 16 miles an hour, so it'll feel like 4. Expect a lot of handoffs. I like Tyler Algier's number in that one, too. As you see down below, I expect he'll go over his rushing prop. He had 139 last week against New Orleans. He'll get a lot of carries in this game. Josh Allen, over 48.5 rushing yards. Here's the thing. It doesn't matter if the Bears put everybody at the line of scrimmage. Have you seen Josh Allen run? He runs angry. He had that big run last week against Miami with the game on the line. Where he just basically ran a QB draw and picked up, 40-some yards. Then he had the 44 yards. They went over the top for the tying 2-point conversion. Then they had the big drive to kick the field goal at the end to win it. Allen, 705 rushing yards. He's looking recent weeks. He's been on a roll in that department as well. 78 against the Lions on Thanksgiving. He was held to 20 against New England, but that included a bunch of kneel downs. 47 against the Jets and a score, and then he had 77 against the Dolphins last week. The Bears are banged up on defense, and it should lead to a bunch of RPOs or designed QB draws and stuff where they drop back in coverage, and he just takes off. And, that works. Devontae Adams, over 67.5 receiving yards. We talked about the Steelers already. I don't have a ton of faith in them. Adams, like I said, he's caught 86 balls for over 1,275 yards. And let's face it, the guy is good, and Derek Carr is going to be looking for him in this game. There's no reason why he shouldn't get at least 75 or 80 yards. Now that takes us to Derrick Henry, and everybody wants to talk about how Derrick Henry, might have been washed up because he struggled early in the year. He's had his issues in the second half of the season, mainly because of the fact that nobody believes in it in the quarterback play, and now it's going to be Malik Willis back under center. But Willis did start against the Texans back in Week 8 in a game where Henry ran the ball 32 times for only 219 yards. In his career, Henry has faced the Texans 11 times. He's run for 1,254 yards and 11 touchdowns. So he's averaging 114 yards a game and a score. He's averaging 6.21 yards a carry in his career against Houston. In his last 4 games against the Texans, in 2019 at Houston, 32 carries, 211 yards, 3 touchdowns. In 2020 at home, 22 carries, 212 yards, and 2 touchdowns. At Houston, at the end of the 2020 season, 34 carries, 250 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He didn't face him in either game last year because it came after he had that foot injury. Then, like I said, the day before Halloween, October 30th, at Houston, 32 carries, 219 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So his last 4 games, he's racked up almost 900 yards on the ground and 9 touchdowns against Houston's defense. In a game that Tennessee needs to have with a rookie quarterback, you have to think that Henry puts up big numbers again. Bill, what about under on all the NFL games today? Well, don't forget you do have a couple games in domes. I mean, you got Minnesota's in a dome against the Giants. Dallas and Philadelphia are in a dome. I definitely like the under in New Orleans, Cleveland. I don't know if I would trust the under in Seattle and Kansas City just because we've seen Kansas City have all kinds of problems defensively. You know, they struggled against Houston. They struggled against Denver. You made those 2 bottom feeder offenses look, relevant. You gave 28 to the Broncos. You gave up 24 to the Texans. Geno Smith, I know that the Seahawks have been reeling. They won't have Tyler Lockett. I wouldn't be surprised if that game ends up being, 34-21 or 34-24 or something like that. But in a lot of the other games, Buffalo, Chicago wouldn't surprise me if it's an under with the weather. New Orleans, Cleveland wouldn't surprise me. Houston, Tennessee, neither team has a quarterback. Cincinnati, New England, I don't think the weather is supposed to be horrible in Foxborough. Let me just pull that up real quick. Temps are supposed to be in the mid-20s in Foxborough, so it's not going to be as cold or as windy up there. It'll depend on what Cincinnati does. Yeah, you could tease the unders for sure. Because you could probably tease Seattle, Kansas City. I think the number was at 40. Let's say it was like 48.5 or something like that. Let me just take a look at what the latest numbers are on those because I hadn't had a chance to look at them this morning. Let's see. Totals around the league. Okay, Minnesota and the Giants is at 49. Detroit, Carolina is 43.5. Cincinnati, New England, 41.5. Buffalo and Chicago, the total's 40 or 40.5. Houston, Tennessee, depending on where you look, 34.5, 35 or 35.5. Seattle, Kansas City has gone back up. It's back up to 50.5. So they're expecting point-a-palooza there. Atlanta, Baltimore, 34.5 or 35. The Saints, Browns, 31.5 or 32. Washington, San Francisco, 37.5. Philadelphia, Dallas, 47 or 47.5. And then the Raiders, Steelers, 38 or 38.5, depending on where you look. Like I said, the ones that I'd worry about the most would be Eagles, Cowboys because it's indoors. Let's see. Giants, Vikings because it's indoors, and the Vikings can't stop anybody. And then probably Kansas City, Seattle. So if you bump those up, then I could see going that route for sure. AJ says he saw people teasing every NHL game over 4.5 yesterday at plus 800. Yeah, I mean, the weird thing is, we saw a lot of games in the NHL where the scores, there were a bunch of unders early in the week, and then yesterday, you look around and you had 11 goals with the Flyers and the Hurricanes. You had 7 with Boston and New Jersey. You had 6 with the Islanders and the Panthers. Dallas and Montreal had 6. Chicago, Columbus had 7. Vancouver and Edmonton had 7. Vegas and St. Louis had 9. And then you had the dud games like Colorado, Nashville had 5, and Calgary, Anaheim had 5, and Winnipeg, Washington had 5, and then you had, of course, the barn burner of the night, which was Arizona and the Kings, that ended up 2-1 in a shootout. So it's been weird because, the early part of the week, I think it was 17 or 19 out of 23 games were under the total of the NHL, and then all of a sudden, everybody started scoring again. Travis Kelce, over 78.5 receiving yards. Let's face it, if you're Patrick Mahomes, who are you going to throw the ball to? Kelce or Valdez-Scantling? And I know about Smith-Schuster, and I know McKinnon and everybody else, but let's face it, Kelce, 91 grabs, 1,144 yards, tied for the league lead with 12 touchdowns. He had 3 straight weeks where he only caught 4 passes, which was weird because he was targeted 8, 6, and 9 times in those games, but only 4 catches last week. Targeted 10 times, caught all 10 balls for 105 yards. I expect, Seattle has been horrible defensively. Let's just see how bad they are. They are 29th in scoring defense. They are well, they're middle of the road against the pass, but here's the problem. Their corners are going to be covering, the receivers. I don't think you want Tariq Woolen trying to guard Kelce down the middle of the field. So it's going to fall to Quandre Diggs and company, and I just don't know if those guys can keep Kelce in check. Oscar says under Cleveland and the Saints. Yeah, like I said, the last time Cleveland played in weather like this was against Cincinnati, and that game ended up 14-0. Neither team is very good offensively. I know everybody was hyped up about Deshaun Watson coming back. But let's face it, he's looked pretty pedestrian. And so is that Browns offense. And that's why they're going nowhere this season. You can't blame Jacoby Brissett. He did a decent job keeping that team in games. But Cleveland, what can you say about Cleveland? They're not good. Just a quick look at that. Watson, since coming back, sure they're 2-1, but he got a lot of help from the defense and special teams in the first win when they beat Houston on 2 defensive touchdowns and a punt return. He didn't do jack last week against Baltimore. He's 56 of 92 for 568 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He was sacked 6 times. He has run for 76 yards, in case everybody was excited about that. But the numbers aren't great, let's face it. And you paid a lot of money for that. Yep, and Oscar saying with 30-mile-an-hour winds, yeah, and all running. Yeah, that's why I think, I expect one of the props I took earlier yesterday was Taysom Hill over 35.5 rushing yards, because I think you're going to see him run a bunch of QB power and stuff in his limited sets in there. But yeah, that game, Baltimore is going to be the same way. Baltimore, Atlanta, you're going to get a lot of running because both those teams run, they can't pass. Finally, Mixon over 20.5 receiving yards. If New England blitzes with Judon and Uche and everybody else, Burrow's going to want to get the ball out quick. I look for Mixon and P. Ryan to be involved in the passing game a lot for that. And then Algier, we talked about for the Falcons. He ran for 139 last week. I know Baltimore is a decent run defense, but let's face it, Baltimore is also prone to blowing big leads. I've seen that repeatedly this season. That's why, they're not at the top of the AFC North, much less the conference, much less the North, because they've blown double-digit leads on a regular basis. But that sums up everything for the show. I hope everybody has a profitable afternoon/evening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking time out of your Christmas Eve to be with us. Like I said, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons so that way you know when we're here. Even though everybody knows by now it's Saturdays at 9. Look for the look down in the show box for the parlay of the day that is available. It's normally $12. You use the promo code that I've got scrolling around the bottom of the screen. You can get it for $6. Last week's paid out better than 11-1. Why not put some extra money in your pocket for the holidays? Nathan talked about how he hit a 3 and 4 teamer last night, so that's always a good thing as well. But like I said, thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the show, and enjoy the holidays with your friends and your family. Be safe out there because the weather, I know, like I said, back home where my parents live, a lot of snow. No snow here, but it's just cold. But still, be safe. Have a good time. Enjoy the time with family and friends or whatever you do. And we will see you next week on New Year's Eve for Just Parlays with Chris King. I, of course, am Chris King. Enjoy the rest of the day, everybody. Be safe. Take care. Thanks for being here. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.